tutorial, we learned how to use the oscillator section, the filter section, the output section, and envelope 3. Okay, so essentially we came up with a sound that sounds like this. Okay, so it's almost like a sort of quite a string, brassy type of sound. Okay, um, the cool thing about the ES2 instrument is that it also has quite a quite a wide range of different functions in order to route the signal to a variety of different places. Okay, so and this is actually what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the section here at the bottom, which is called the LFO. We're going to have a look at LFO1 and all the different waveforms that an LFO can have. Also, we're going to have a bit of a look at LFO2, and we're definitely going to have a look at the other two envelopes. Perhaps envelope 2, which is actually quite a useful function, you know, in order to sort of shape the sound in whichever way you want. In order to do that, in order to actually learn how to use the LFOs and the envelopes, we definitely need to have a look at this thing here, which is called the matrix. All right, this is going to be our main source of let's call it routing. Okay, so the matrix, well, as it happens, he says that it's called the router, right? But also we can actually use it in a different way, which is in fact called the vector. Okay, this is really fun. This is really cool because you can actually sort of the vector as the name does actually suggest, sort of employs the x and y sort of grids. Okay, so and you can actually turn it into something that it's, you know, it's almost like a bit of a sequencer sort of thing. You can kind of come up with some arpeggios and so on. All right. Okay, so first of all, let's have a bit of a look at these sort of LFOs. All right. So before we actually get into it, I'd like to actually briefly explain what an LFO is. Okay. An LFO, the acronym LFO stands for Low Frequency Oscillator. Okay, Low Frequency Oscillator. We already know that we've got 3 oscillators right there. Okay, so an LFO is in fact an oscillator, but it's not audible. Okay, so what it means that it kind of produces frequencies below the hearing capabilities. Okay, however, what we can do, we can actually use the LFO, the low frequency oscillator, to modulate something else, such as, for example, the pitch. Okay, we can also modulate the filters, such as the cutoff frequency filter or the resonant filter, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, so this is how we do it. So first of all, we need to actually employ those sort of, we need to employ this matrix. Okay, so this is how we do it. So first of all, let me just bypass the first one because that's already taken. All right, so let's have a look at what this thing does. So we've got here target and source. Okay, and we also have like a green arrow that can actually go up and down. At the moment, it's actually disabled, all right, because everything has been turned off. All right, so imagine that I want to use an LFO, okay, to modulate the pitch of the 3 oscillators, okay? So to modulate the pitch of the 3 oscillators, meaning that imagine that I want to create a vibrato sort of effect. Remember that a vibrato effect affects the pitch of a sound, okay? So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to select target, okay? So the target is going to be the pitch of the 3 oscillators, okay? Pitch 1, 2, 3, okay? You can see that you've got a whole bunch of other options, okay? So let's do something that it's actually quite obvious so we can then hear it, okay? So I'm going to select the pitch of oscillator 1, 2, and 3. All right? And the source is going to be LFO1. Okay? Remember that we've got two LFOs. All right? Let's have a listen and see what it sounds like. Nothing. Okay? However, as soon as I move this green arrow up, you can hear that it will, the effect of the LFO. All right? I can actually increase it even more, and then it's going to be really, really obvious. Okay? Or if I just want to use a tiny bit, you know, I can actually place it close to the 0. So you can still hear the effect of the LFO, and it kind of creates a bit of movement to the sound. Now, you've got something here which is called the rate, okay? Which means how fast the LFO travels per second. How many cycles the LFO travels per second. At the moment, it says right here that it actually cycles 5.9 hertz per second, which means that if I press a key, right? Oops, sorry, my bad. What am I doing? If I press a key, this sound sort of goes up and down 11 times per second. All right, so I can actually turn the LFO right up if I wish. All right, or if I want to, I can actually turn it all the way down, which means that at the moment, if I set it to 1, all right, that means that the LFO cycle 1 hertz per second. All right, or you can actually make it go even lower if you wish. So, and so on. Okay, so LFOs are really cool. You can actually do a whole bunch of different things. All right. Now, the other cool thing that you can do, as you know, okay, an oscillator can produce different waveforms. All right. Well, by definition, an LFO, low-frequency oscillator, being an oscillator, can also produce different waveforms. At the moment, it's set to triangular waveform. How about we actually change it to sawtooth wave? All right. Let's have a listen and see what it sounds like. It's a bit sharper. Okay. Let's have a listen to that one. You can actually have square wave, and then inverted square wave, and some sort of random waveforms. Oops, sorry, my bad. What am I doing? I'm actually... Sorry, my bad. Actually, I've chosen the wrong... and so on, okay? So you can actually sort of choose whichever LFO you want, all right? And that's that. So that's the first thing that you can do. All right, now let's have a bit of a look at LFO2. LFO2 is actually slightly different, okay? Slightly different, simply because of the fact that if I now, as a target, instead of actually, I'm still going to keep the pitch of the 3 oscillators. The source I'm going to change to LFO2. Okay, well, here's the difference. The difference is this. You can still change the rate of the LFO, okay, as we were doing just now. Actually, let me just move. Or if you want to, you can actually set it to follow the click, which means that, imagine that you wanted to have the LFO to sort of do that. So basically what that is an actual subdivision of the click. So if I put a click on, 3, 4. You can see or you can hear that the LFO is in fact going in time with the click. All right? So you can actually make it go faster if you wish. So you can actually set it to, I don't know, what is it, 16th note? 2, 3, 4, and so on. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you can do. Cool, that's pretty good. All right, so, and if you want to, you can then bypass it, in which case you can hear it. Nice. All right, so that's one thing that you can do. Now, another thing that you can do, if you wish, you can also affect the LFO. Sorry, you can actually get the LFO to affect the cutoff frequency filter, in which case you end up with effects like this. Let's see how it works. All right, the target, again, is going to be cutoff 1, okay, which is in fact this filter, and the source is going to be LFO2. Let's check this out. No effect. I'm going to turn that intensity up a bit. I might actually just speed up the LFO a little bit. And so on. So you get the idea of the sort of stuff that you can do. If you want to sync that to your click, off you go. 3, 4. And by all means, you can try to change the actual waveforms. Let's have a listen and see what it sounds like with the square wave. And so on. Okay? So this is what the router actually does. Allows you to route a signal, and you can actually modulate that signal with something else, such as the LFO. All right. So other things that you could also do, you can actually use the envelopes to modulate a signal. You already know that an envelope sort of affects a sound over time. Okay, so we already know that envelope 3 is in fact hardwired to the output. Envelope 2, on the other hand, you can actually use it to modulate something over time. Okay, and this is what I mean. So for example, imagine that you wanted to modulate the pitch of the 3 oscillators over time, which means that it will start, the pitch will increase or decrease according to the attack. Or the pitch will then go back to standard, to normal pitch, according to the actual release. All right? What I mean is this. So I'm going to bypass what I just did now, so that way we're not going to get confused. All right, I'm going to use a different slot. Okay? So the targets, like I said, I just want to keep it obvious, so in the way we can really hear what's happening. So the target is going to be the pitch of the 3 oscillators, right? The source, this time, is going to be envelope 2. All right? Now let's have a listen. So at the moment, the pitch is not going to be affected because that thing, that green intensity has been turned down. I'm going to turn it up a little bit, all right? You can clearly hear that there's something going on with the pitch right there. All right. All right. Well, let's increase that attack a little bit to actually make it really obvious. All right. So if I increase the sustain all the way up, okay, that's a bit much, obviously, but you can you get the idea. You know, once you actually sort of start playing around with your attack, decay, sustain, and release, then, you know, you can come up with some really convincing sounds. Might just want to turn the release down a little bit, perhaps. And so on. So maybe just add a little bit more attack to it. All right, see what it sounds like with a bit of modulation to our. All right, let's have a bit of some of that pitch modulation in there, see what it sounds like again. Pretty cool. All right, like I said, you can. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you can change. It doesn't necessarily have to be LFO2. All right, let's change it back to LFO1, and then let's change the speed of LFO1. So we're going to have LFO1 playing at a different speed than the LFO2. So which will be like this. All right, and you can kind of change, instead of actually being the pitch, you can actually get the, let's go ahead and maybe just put the resonant filter, all right, which is this guy right here. So let's have a listen. And so on. Okay, so this is the sort of stuff that you can do with your matrix. Okay, so again, to quickly recap, you can actually modulate a parameter via something else. All right, with envelope 2, you know, like I said, you know, at the moment we actually chose the pitch, but we don't have to use the pitch. We can actually use perhaps even, I don't know, we can actually choose the cutoff frequency filter, which means that if we've got that engaged, what happens is that the cutoff frequency filter will then open up according to the attack. All right, so all right, so you can do stuff like that, okay? You just have to play around a little bit and then, you know, see what you can come up with. All right, and that's it. So that's kind of the function of this router, or if you want to call it, it's also known as the matrix, all right? So this is the sort of stuff that you can do with that. Nice, all right. Now let's have a bit of a look at something else, which is in fact this thing called the vector. So I am going to click on vector and see what happens. All right. Now the vector here, it's a little bit more sort of ambiguous, if I can say that, right? Which means that, you know, like I said earlier on, you can kind of come up with a range of different sort of sequences and maybe arpeggios using the X and Y pad, all right? And this is what I mean. All right, now first of all, you can see that you've got the X target and the Y target, okay? And also you've got something in there which is called INT, which stands for intensity, all right? Now, I'm going to click on the X target, which is in fact sort of this guy, all right? The X target. So it goes from left to right. Okay, so the X target, if I click on it, you can see that you've got like a whole bunch of different options. Okay, so I'm going to choose the X. Again, like I said, for this specific sort of demonstration, I'm going to be very, very obvious. So in the way you can actually hear the effect of that. You don't need. You can be a bit more subtle. Okay, so but like I said, I'm just going to be obvious so you can actually hear it. So I'm going to choose the pitch 1, 2, 3, okay, which is in fact the pitch of the 3 oscillators. Now the pitch of the 3 oscillators are going to be assigned to the X target, which is this guy right here, okay? And I'm going to give it like a positive sort of intensity, all the way up to 1, okay? So I'm going to go from there to there. Cool. Now the Y target. Now for the Y target, I might choose something slightly different. Now for the Y target, you've got like a whole bunch of different things. You got, what can we choose? For the Y target, maybe we could choose, let's have a look. Let's go ahead and choose that cutoff frequency filter, which is in fact that one there. All right. Now, if we've given a positive value for the pitch, for the X target, for the Y target, we're going to give it a negative value, -1. So which means that now the Y target goes from here, -1, all the way up. All right, sweet. Now we've done that. Lovely. Now the next point, the next thing that we need to do this. We need to create, see that you've got this thing here, which is called solo point, right? Now, if I right-click on this blue bar, right? If I right-click, I can actually go to initialize to 8-point loops or 16-point loops. Let's start with 8, okay? One more time. I right-click on this bar and select 8-point loops. And that's it. Now what happens here is that, can you see that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 point loops, right? Now what I'm going to do, I am going to assign to each one of these loops a specific target with this X, Y pad. Okay, remember that the X is the pitch and the Y is the cutoff frequency filter. All right, now let's have a look. So you need to click on solo point. Okay. I'm literally just, what I'm doing, I'm actually pressing one key. But can you hear that the pitch is actually increasing? And together with the cutoff frequency filter. So imagine that for the first solo point, I want to use that sound. All right. Now for the next solo point, I'm going to choose a different one. Maybe that one. Third solo point. Choose that one. Fourth. That one. Fifth. That one. Seventh. That one. Eighth. And that's it. All right, nice. So essentially what we've done, we've actually assigned to each one of those points, right, a target, which is in fact the blend of the X and the Y. All right, I hope that makes sense so far. Now let's have a listen and see what we've done. So if I take it out of solo point and hit a key, check this out. Pretty cool. All right, that's pretty cool. All right, so you can actually set here, you've got a loop rate, okay? So, which means that you can actually change it. You can actually, this one here, if I play like that, it's going to be super fast. All right. If I want to, I can actually make it go a bit slower. Or probably even slower if I wish. And so on. So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do, right? So you can kind of so you can actually have the loop mode to go forwards or backwards as well, which is pretty fun. And so on. Things that you could also do at the moment, you can see that you've got 8 points and the spacing between each point is 12.5%. Okay, so if you want to, you can actually change the spacing just by kind of messing around with that, which will, what is that going to do? It's just basically going to provide you with a different rhythmical subdivision. and so on. Okay, so if you mess it up, then you can click on fix timing, and off it goes. Actually, no, sorry. If you mess it up, there's a I can't remember how to fix it. Sorry. Anyway, so you get the idea. Other things that you could probably do with that. So you can kind of let's right click on that and then initialize to 8 point. There you go. So that's what you need to do. If you right click, go back to. So things that you could also do instead of actually having the pitch, you can kind of have something else. For example, like I said, you can kind of have what could you possibly have? Maybe resonance and actually no. Let's go back to cutoff one, and I want to show you another pretty nifty little trick. Now, can you see that on oscillator 3 you've got sine, right? Now, the cool thing with that is that if I right click on oscillator 3 where it says sine, it gives you 99 different possible waveforms. Okay, 99 different possible waveforms. Okay, which means that imagine that if I now select as the Y target, I'm going to select oscillator 3 waveforms. What that thing is going to do is going to cycle through all those different waveforms. All right, let's check this out. Nothing. So let's have a look. All right, real quick. Do another one. That one there. That one there. That one. That one. And that one. Alright, now let's have a listen, see what we've done. And there you have it. All right. So I hope that kind of provides you with a bit of extra knowledge as far as this synth. It's I think it's a really really good synthesizer. Brilliant to create sounds for sound design and so on. So have fun, and I'll catch you later.